Absolutely, we need more of it.
All right, so I see just Corey and myself as board members. Have you heard from anybody else, Eric?
Lindsay's on.
Lindsay's on.
Oh, there you are, sorry.
Yes, and the co-chair of this committee, Dan Brown, has an appointment. He will be here, just maybe not right at the start of the meeting.
Okay.
And the other committee member, Mark Labhart, had a conflict, so he will not be participating in the interviews on the 14th, 15th. But we are so happy that Corey offered to step in on the grant committee to do this meeting and the interviews on the 14th and 15th to make the recommendations. And it looks like Dan just stepped in as well.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So on the 14th and 15th, you're gonna see the Sia Cortez behind me and that 2-day meeting.
We will be jealous.
Wow.
Yes. But I did block it out. I'm not gonna do any adventures that day. I'm committed to sitting in on the meeting both those days.
Thank you for your devotion to OWEB.
All right, so I guess, hi, Dan.
Hello.
So we don't need to identify who's here in the room because it's live stream. Eric, what do you think?
It would be good to recognize the board members that are present and OWEB staff that are present. And so for board members, we have this committee's co-chairs, the grant committee's co-chairs, Barbara Boyer and Dan Brown, Lindsay McCleary on the grant committee. Corey Owens is from the OWEB board and will be participating in the grant committee for the FIP evaluation process. And for staff today from OWEB, we have Director Sharpelo Hansen, we have Eric Hartstein, Policy Coordinator, Ken Fetcho, Monitoring Coordinator, Jillian McCarthy, Partnerships Coordinator, and Taylor Larson, whose position is changing, which I will get to in agenda item number 2. And we have Ivy Clark Henry, who is our administrative support and running the YouTube live stream for us. So thank you, Ivy.
All right, so I think we're just gonna let you take it away, right, Dan? We're gonna let Eric take it away from us.
Sure thing.
All right, first up on the agenda is a brief update on the Upper Middle Fork John Day Intensively Monitored Watersheds project, and Ken is going to provide that update for us.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. Ken Fetcho, Effectiveness Monitoring Coordinator. I'd like to provide a brief update on the Upper Middle Fork John Day River Intensively Monitored Watershed, or IMW. It's a funding update. Happy to talk more about the science some other time, but this is a brief update. This is a long-term watershed scale project, monitoring project to assess the effects of watershed restoration on the population scale response to spring Chinook and summer steelhead. This project started in 2008, collaboration with ODF&W, OWEB, the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs, and the North Fork John Day Watershed Council, and many other partners. This project was initiated with NOAA funding back in around that period of time, kind of 2008, 2007. There was this talk about this need to establish these long-term monitoring projects across the Pacific Northwest. So NOAA approached Oregon, and we selected the Upper Middle Fork John Day River as this area to be intensively monitored with partners. And so every year, NOAA makes approximately $300,000 available to the states of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And OWEB is Oregon's recipient of those funds, and then we distribute those out. And so we heard from, and so NOAA, they give those funds to Pacific States Marines Fishery Commission, or PSMFC. They provide funding to OWEB, and then we sub-grant to ODF&W, the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs, and the North Fork John Day Watershed Council. We got word in March that we were to receive another annual installment of these funds, and so we prepared our worked with the partners to prepare scopes of work and budgets. Those have all been submitted, and now we're just waiting paperwork. When the spending plan was approved by the board last July, you approved to receive up to $600,000 from the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission to receive these IMW funds. And so that made it easier so that we don't have to go to you each year to ask for recipient. We kind of package it up in the spending plan, but we're just letting you guys know that things are on track. We're likely to see that contract amendment in June, and then we will add funds, do amendments with our subgrantees to modify scopes of work and add funds to their funding agreements so that we can continue that monitoring through 23. And so that's exciting. These are discretionary funds that are provided by NOAA, and so they come every year, but there's no guarantee. And so we feel that the states of Oregon, Washington, Idaho have been very successful at describing the value worth of what we're learning from these monitoring efforts, and that has helped us be successful in receiving these annual funds. Again, I'm happy to talk more about the science and learnings in a future meeting, but today just wanted to really let you guys know that things are proceeding as we envisioned when you guys approved the spending plan last year. So any questions or comments, please?
Barbara Boyer has a quick question. So you mentioned 300,000. Is that between the 3 states, or is it 300 just for the state of Oregon?
Oh, it's and it's really 289,000-ish, but it's always changes a little bit, but I just round it up. But yeah, that's to each state. Yeah, so we'll get 289, Idaho gets 289, and Washington gets 289. And there's some of that funding that PSMFC gets off the top for admin costs. And the only thing I'll provide is that I work to administer those funds, and that's sort of as a match contribution. OWEB does not bill any indirect cost to that, so that we can pass through those funds to our subgrantees.
Hey, Ken, how long has the monitoring been going on in the John Day?
So we are in year 15. So it started in 2008. This is year 15. And next year, we have a 10-year report that we presented to the board, and it was written in 2017 and presented to the board in 2018. I could share those links so you can hear those presentations, but also some of the products. And so we will be doing a 15-year roll-up next year. And I really think that's a great opportunity to come to you guys when that's complete, that sort of end of 23, early 24, to describe what we're learning from that 15-year roll-up.
And then is NOAA kind of consolidating the monitoring from all 3 states into some sort of general trends for the species, or?
Yeah, there's a variety of synthesis documents that they've had PNAMP and private contractors work on. PNAMP is the Pacific Northwest Aquatic Monitoring Partnership that is coordinated and organized by USGS. And so there's been a variety of synthesis documents that NOAA has helped support that PNAMP and private contractors have produced. One thing that we just completed, and the report came out yesterday, was Washington Salmon Recovery Fund Board, or SURF Board. They provided funds to PNAMP to do another roll-up, and that just came out of all the Pacific Northwest IMW findings, and that might be of interest to you guys and could potentially dig into more in a committee level or even in the board in the future.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, if no other questions, we can move to agenda item number 2. And this is an update on the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program. Wanted to bring this to the committee today because a significant milestone happened in short session this past winter spring, where $5 million was appropriated to the Agricultural Heritage Program And that is the first time the program has had funding to award grants that are authorized in the statute, which was adopted 5 years ago now in 2017. So really exciting opportunity. And just wanted to remind the committee that the structure of the program is such that the Agricultural Heritage Commission, which is appointed by the OWEB board, makes funding recommendations on grants to the OWEB board, who approves those grants. And given the timeline for evaluations, the way that's likely to work is that the commission will make its recommendations at a meeting about a month preceding the OWEB board meeting, so that we can line up for the OWEB board to act on those funding recommendations. And so there won't be that much time between the commission's activity and the OWEB board's action, but wanted to give you a heads up that that's how that process is going to play out. We will get you more information on a timeline as soon as we have finalized that. And one of the first things that we did out of the gate is a recruitment process to hire a coordinator for the program. The way that statute is structured, there's a 12% cap on administrative costs. And so some of the funding out of that $5 million pays for staff costs, contractor costs, that kind of thing. And so we're able to get 2.5 FTEs of positions with that appropriation. And the first recruitment was for a coordinator for the program. And just yesterday was his first day on the job. Taylor Larson was selected to be the Ag Heritage Coordinator. So congratulations, Taylor. And Taylor, of course, has dual roles here at this meeting because he had been involved in the FIP solicitation and review and evaluation. So he's transitioning from that partnership coordinator role in the FIP program to the Ag Heritage program. So welcome, Taylor. Give you opportunity here just to introduce your new role to the committee.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And yeah, really excited to be stepping in to run this new program at OWEB, and just really looking forward to kind of marrying my two passions, agriculture and building a livelihood based on the land, and finding a way to do that in harmony with the rest of the beings that live on this earth. So really excited to get to build this program from the ground up and bring some other really talented folks on board, and keep you all updated on the progress, but still very fresh and new, and haven't even really had a chance to talk with Eric since I took the job. So looking forward to next steps.
All right. Well, welcome, Taylor. The other two recruitments that are currently happening are one for an administrative support position, and then the other one for a conservation easement specialist. One of the primary funding programs here is to fund agricultural easements on working lands. And so we have a recruitment that's out there now. So if anyone knows someone with conservation easement experience, send them our way. We're actively recruiting for that position. And so then we'll be fully staffed, and Taylor's first item of business really is to get the first solicitation going for that program. The commission met in April to talk about their strategy, their funding strategy, and essentially develop a spending plan for the funds that were appropriated. The bulk of the funds, about $4.1 million, will be made available for conservation easement grants. And then there will be a $150,000 offering for entities to develop conservation management plans under the statute. So we'll keep you guys updated, keep the OWEB board updated as we move forward, particularly once we develop a solicitation and a timeline, so that you know what to expect. We're hopeful of having the commission get together at some point in the spring of 2023 to make funding recommendations. And so it's possible we could be before the OWEB board at either the April meeting or the July meeting of next year with funding decisions. So any questions on Ag Heritage? All right, seeing none, turn it over to my colleague, Eric Hartstein, for item 3, which is what we plan the bulk of the agenda for today, which is preparation for the June 14th, 15th interviews of FIP partnership applicants in public session. So go ahead, Eric.
Great, thanks, Eric, and good morning, everyone. So going to give a little bit of an overview of the 2021-2023 FIP solicitation, both the applications and the review process. So starting in January of this year, the applications for the FIP program were submitted. And at that point, the applications went through 2 expert review panels. So in March, the first panel evaluated the capacity of the partnerships to implement their initiative. And then in late March and April, a second expert review panel focused on the ecological merits of each of the applications. We're moving now into June when, as Eric just mentioned, in a couple of weeks, the grants committee will be conducting interviews and making recommendations for the full board to consider when making FIP awards at the July board meeting. So for this current biennium solicitation for the FIP program, OWEB received 11 applications requesting just about $100 million over 3 biennia. And really for the first time, we have applications in each of the 7 board identified ecological priorities for the FIP program. And here we have a snapshot of the board's current spending plan for focused investments in 2021, 2023. You see the line items for the existing FIP initiatives and $10 million for new FIPs for this biennium. So FIP evaluation criteria are found in OWEB administrative rules. So partnership capacity expert review panel that I mentioned earlier evaluated the applications on the capacity to partner, engage the community, and catalyze additional investments, as well as the performance, history, and composition of the partnership. The second review panel, the ecological experts, evaluated applications on the potential for progress toward measurable ecological outcomes, the ability to track progress towards proposed outcomes, the scientific basis and planning tools that support the proposed initiative, and if the budget supports achieving ecological outcomes. And you'll see one other evaluation criterion here on the slide, and that is the extent to which the initiative addresses a board priority. And that's one that has been reserved really for the grants committee as you put forward recommendations to the full board for new FIP initiatives, and really to the full board in making the deliberations and ultimate FIP awards this July. So applications, evaluations for this biennium have been developed and posted to OWEB's website, and we emailed, sent you the link for this. And each of the 11 application evaluations includes an initiative abstract, a budget overview, and a map, which have been pulled directly from the applications themselves. The expert review team rating summary on how the application met each FIP evaluation criterion. And then potential interview questions that have been developed by staff based on discussions at the review team meetings. And a ratings worksheet that provides detailed strengths and concerns for each evaluation criterion. So now I'll transition to the 11 FIP applications and a little summary of their evaluations. Starting with the Klamath Siskiyou Oak Network application. So this one addresses the oak woodland and prairie habitat board priority for the FIP program. They requested a little over $7 million over 3 biennia for OWEB funding, starting with $1.3 million in the current biennium and moving closer to $3 million in subsequent biennia. The estimated total match for the initiative is over 2.8 million. And the Klamath Siskiyou Oak Network application received an overall rating of a high minus in the capacity and ecological expert reviews. And just a little bit on how we determined that overall rating is really just an average of the evaluation criteria. So we determined the overall rating by assigning a number to each criterion rating, starting with if there was a high plus, it would receive a 9, a high would be an 8, a high minus 7, medium plus 6, and so on. And then really adding those numbers up and then just dividing by the number of criteria that they were evaluated on, in this case, 6. So that's how we got to that overall rating for each of these. So now potential interview questions from OWEB staff. Again, these were based off of the discussions at the review team meetings, and the committee is encouraged to use these questions during the interviews, but also to feel free to ask any questions based on the application materials, your knowledge of the board ecological priorities, the initiative geographies, or the partnerships themselves. So first question is for the Klamath Siskiyou Oak Network, with only 2 partners set to receive FIP funding if awarded, both involved in other FIPs. How will the partnership achieve its goals if capacity issues arise at one or both organizations? Next question is, how does the partnership determine if oak woodland or oak savanna is the appropriate ecosystem target for an individual site? How will conservation gains be maintained in the long term when working on private lands? How much outreach has occurred to private landowners in the proposed FIP geography? And how willing are they to engage in oak conservation efforts on their land? And the final question that staff developed is, what are the barriers to the use of prescribed fire in the proposed FIP geography? And how does the partnership intend to overcome these barriers? The next application comes from the Harney Basin Wetlands Collaborative, which is addressing the Oregon Closed Lakes Basin Wetlands Board priority. The total requested OWEB funding is close to $12 million with a fairly consistent budget of around $3.9 million for each of the biennia. Total estimated match for the initiative is $4.1 million. And the Harney Basin Wetlands Collaborative application received an overall rating of medium plus in the capacity and ecological expert reviews. Staff questions are, what is the historic ecological condition of the wetlands in the proposed FIP geography? And is the intent of the partnership to restore those ecological conditions? What is the litigation status around Foley's Slough? And how will it impact the ability of the partners to implement their work plan? The partnership implemented projects in the first FIP initiative that allowed them to learn more about the causes of poor habitat conditions on Malheur Lake. How will a second round of FIP funding result in large-scale restoration efforts on the lake? Describe how conservation metrics will be monitored over the long term. And the proposed budget includes a substantial investment in technical assistance. Discuss why this amount of technical assistance is necessary, given that the previous FIP initiative also featured a relatively high amount of technical assistance. Next application comes from the East Cascades Oak Partnership, which is addressing the oak woodlands and prairie habitat board priority. Total requested OEB funding is just over $7 million, starting with around 2.5 million in the first two biennia and down to about 2.2 million in the last biennium. The total estimated match for the initiative is close to 13.8 million. And the East Cascade Oak Partnership application received an overall rating of high minus in the expert reviews. Staff questions are, how does the stakeholder engagement budget support the needs described in the proposal? How will the partnership ensure it has the right skills to ensure successful implementation of restoration projects described in the work plan? How will the partnership measure success over a large geography and set of restoration actions? The work plan is complex with a variety of oak habitats over a broad geography and with many private landowners. Does the partnership feel that the work plan scale is achievable? And the proposal discusses permit and burn windows as challenges. How will these challenges be addressed? Next application comes from the Siuslaw Coho Partnership, addressing the coho habitat and populations along the Oregon coast board priority. Total requested OEB funding is the maximum of $12 million over the three biennia, with an estimated match of over 12.5 million. Siuslaw Coho Partnership application received an overall rating of high minus in the expert reviews. Questions from staff. It appears that the partnership paused due to the COVID-19 pandemic and staff turnover. Describe the partnership's capacity coming into the FIP and the plan for potential staff turnover during the initiative. Describe the partnership's engagement with large industrial forestry landowners and the Oregon Department of Forestry. Could their omission from the partnership impact the ability to achieve proposed ecological outcomes? Describe how warm water fish in Triangle Lake might impact projects in the area and the partnership's plan to address potential impacts. What percentage of the geography in this proposal is on public land versus private land? And the monitoring strategy is focused on project scale monitoring. How will landscape scale impacts be monitored to better understand the impact of the initiative as a whole? Next application comes from the Oregon Central Coast Estuary Collaborative, which is addressing the coastal estuaries in Oregon board priority. Total requested OEB funding is just over 7.8 million, starting with around 1.5 million in the first biennium, bumping up to 3.9 million in the second biennium, and then down to about 2.4 million in the last biennium. Total estimated match for the initiative is close to 5 million. And the Oregon Central Coast Estuary Collaborative application received an overall rating of high minus in both the capacity and ecological expert reviews. Questions from OEB staff? How does the partnership technical assistance budget support the partnership and enable it to be successful throughout the course of the initiative? How does the stakeholder engagement budget support the partnership to engage with private landowners and achieve the ecological goals of the initiative? Some of the partnering organizations have experienced significant staff turnover during the last few years. Describe how the partnership will address potential staff turnover during the course of the initiative. The success of restoration outcomes relies on negotiation of land acquisition. Given the complexities and uncertainties around land acquisition, describe why the partnership feels confident that it will achieve the ecological objectives described in the proposal. And the monitoring strategy is focused on site and project-specific monitoring. As the partnership considered conducting status and trends monitoring to better understand the impact of the initiative as a whole. Next application comes from the Oregon All Counties CCAA Steering Committee, addressing the sagebrush, sage steppe habitat board priority. Total requested OEB funding is the maximum of $12 million with estimated match of $9 million. Oregon All County CCAA Steering Committee application received an overall rating of medium plus in the capacity and ecological expert reviews. Potential interview questions include the proposal notes that the core partners will split FIT funding equally. Does this lead to challenges in prioritizing land for restoration and conservation purposes? In addition, what will happen if one partner struggles to implement the initiative? Is the nature of the partnership collaborative, or has the partnership developed a collective plan for work and funding and is working separately to implement conservation practices that benefit sage grouse? How does the partnership see their efforts in light of climate change, catastrophic wildfire, and invasive annual grasses? Can their conservation efforts keep up with deteriorating conditions on the landscape? How will the partnership know if their activities result in a positive response from sage grouse? And discuss how you can share specific conservation successes and challenges within the initiative if the location of certain activities is kept confidential. Next application comes from the Salmon Superhighway Partnership, addressing aquatic habitat for native fish board priority. Total requested OEB funding is just over $9.3 million, with a fairly consistent budget of around $3 million across the 3 biennia. A total estimated match for the initiative is over $35 million. Salmon Superhighway Partnership application received an overall rating of medium plus in the capacity and ecological expert reviews. Potential interview questions include: what outreach has been done to tribes or NOAA fisheries to engage them in the partnership? Many of the proposals identified fish passage barriers along the Salmon Superhighway are partial barriers. How does the partnership evaluate the ecological benefits versus cost to replace partial barriers? How is the threshold to restore passage to 95% of historic habitat determined as the optimal threshold? The application describes ecological benefits to fish passage. What ecological benefits beyond restoring fish passage are gained by implementing these passage projects? When it is down to the last few prioritized projects, there isn't the ability to move further down the list to the next willing landowner. How would the partnership adjust the project priority list if some landowners do not agree to a project? Next application comes from the 10-Mile Lakes Steering Committee, which is addressing the coho habitat and populations along the coast board priority. Total requested OEB funding is just over $3.6 million, with a request of about $750,000 in the current biennium and bumping up to $1.1 million in the next biennium, and then $1.7 million for the final biennium. And the total estimated match for the initiative is just over $900,000. 10-Mile Lake Steering Committee application received an overall rating of medium in the capacity and ecological expert reviews. Potential interview questions include: describe the partnership's decision-making process and how the projects listed in the work plan were prioritized. The proposed geography includes a significant amount of agricultural land. Describe why an agricultural representative will not be needed to achieve the proposed ecological outcomes of the initiative. Describe how the proposed water quality goals also address the concerns around salmon recovery in the initiative geography. Describe the wetland upstream restoration actions to be implemented, including their anticipated downstream benefits. And the budget is weighted heavily on land acquisition. Given the complexities and uncertainties around land acquisition, describe why the partnership feels confident that it will achieve the ecological outcomes described in the proposal. Next application comes from the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership, addressing the dry type forest habitat board priority. Total requested OEB funding is the maximum of 12 million with an estimated match of over 9.6 million. Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership application received an overall rating of medium plus in the capacity and ecological expert reviews. And potential interview questions include, describe how the partnership will address private landowner engagement challenges within the initiative geography, and how the partners will earn community support beyond the landowners that have already agreed to participate in the initiative. Describe how the partnership engages the Klamath tribes and how the tribes work with prescribed fire is incorporated in the initiative strategic action plan. The proposal includes actions on roughly 10,000 acres of shrub steppe habitat. Explain why this amount of shrub steppe habitat is appropriate for a dry type forest focused initiative. There is a significant liability associated with reintroducing fire to the landscape. Describe how the partnership addresses the liability and smoke management concerns. And how will the activity described in the proposal benefit Oregon conservation strategy species and/or provide source drinking water protection? Next application comes from the COOS Water Basin COHO Partnership, addressing the COHO habitat and populations along the Oregon coast board priority. Total requested OEB funding is just over $11 million, with a fairly consistent request across the biennia, ranging from about 3.5 million to 3.8 million. The total estimated match for the initiative is close to 8 million. COOS Basin COHO Partnership application received an overall rating of high minus in the capacity and ecological expert reviews. And potential interview questions include, does the partnership anticipate any challenges associated with decision-making, given the larger number of partners and the need for consensus of a quorum? The proposal references a climate resiliency mapping tool that was developed by partners. Describe the tool and how the partnership utilizes it. Measuring outcomes to show meaningful progress will likely require monitoring and analysis beyond the timeline of this initiative. Describe the partnership's plan for monitoring beyond the timeline of this FIP initiative. The proposal cited potentially outdated documents related to climate change. Describe how climate change is considered in the work plan. And while the proposal includes a diverse set of partners, the work plan shows that most of the work will be done by the COOS Watershed Association. Describe why it makes sense for the COOS Watershed Association to be the primary implementer and COOS Watershed Association's capacity to both facilitate the partnership and implement the majority of the work plan. And finally, the last application comes from the Hood River Basin Partnership, which is addressing the aquatic habitat for native fish species board priority. Total requested OEB funding is just over $6.5 million, with a fairly consistent request across the biennia of around 2.1 to 2.2 million for each biennium. Total estimated match for the initiative is close to 26 million. And the Hood River Basin Partnership application received an overall rating of high minus in the capacity and ecological expert reviews. Potential interview questions include, describe how the partnership technical assistance budget supports the partnership and enables it to be successful throughout the course of the initiative. How does the stakeholder engagement budget support the partnership to engage with private landowners to achieve the irrigation efficiency goal of the initiative. Describe how the decision was reached to include the entire Hood River Basin geography in the FIP initiative geography. Describe how the initiative's implementation and monitoring data will be managed, analyzed, and interpreted. And explain the initiative's role with pesticide stewardship. And here we see a summary sheet of the FIP applications for the current biennium. And I really just want to acknowledge here all of the applicants for putting in an incredible amount of work into their applications. And we think that is really demonstrated in the overall ratings for those applications and also captured in the detailed evaluations that you have before you. Also want to express gratitude to all the reviewers looking at the partnership capacity and ecological merits of each partnership and application. And they really put in days, if not weeks, of work into evaluating the applications and really resulted in rich discussions and we think really consistent evaluations during each of the review team meetings. And then moving on to the committee interviews here in a couple of weeks. So on the first day of the meeting, we will start with a brief introduction and an overview. Meeting will begin at 8:30 a.m. and offer an opportunity for public comment, and then move into committee interviews of each of the applicant partnerships. And we have scheduled each interview for 30 minutes, which includes an up to 5-minute introductory presentation by the partnership, leaving 25 minutes for a committee discussion, with each applicant partnership. So we have break schedules, and where there are back-to-back interviews, we've scheduled a 5-minute buffer period for one partnership to exit the virtual platform and the next one to prepare for their interview. And at the end of the day, committee members will have an opportunity to private reflect on what you've heard during the day and taking into account each of the review team ratings. And then we will ask you to rank each application individually through a straw poll, which will likely be a Survey Monkey that we will send a link out to you. And then in day 2 of the meeting at 8:30 a.m., staff will disclose the results of the straw poll to the committee members, which will have that initial ranking from committee members. And then the bulk of the morning is then reserved for committee discussion of the applications, and OWEB staff will be on hand to answer any questions that the committee might have before the committee will put forward your final rankings and recommendations to the full OWEB board. So with that, I will stop and see if there are any questions. Corey.
Yeah, so thank you so much for all the work, obviously, that's gone into this. This is my first time looking at this and being part of this process. Can you just maybe give a quick overview of how the question and answer portion goes? I know you've given us example questions or we can ask other questions, but what's kind of the flow of that conversation?
Yeah, thank you, Corey. So we'll have the 5-minute introductory presentation from each of the partnerships. They will be able to kind of provide an overview for the committee members. You have the potential interview questions before you. Those have also been obviously provided to the partnerships themselves. We envision it to be a sort of a discussion. So you would ask one question and the response would come back, and that would probably elicit some follow-up questions. Also things that you might have read if you're perusing through the application materials, or just sort of knowledge of the overall geography itself. So we see these as sort of framing up a discussion that committee members can have with each of the partnerships.
Is the intent to go through each of the questions you provided, or do you typically have enough time to do that? Or
well, in the
kind of
past,
depends?
yeah, it really depends on the kind of the flow of those conversations. That's why we provided 5 potential interview questions, knowing that the discussion will likely elicit probably some additional questions from the
Thank you.
members.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, Dan.
So just a little more on the logistics around that. Who is doing the asking of the questions during the interviews?
Well, we could probably rotate committee members to ask questions. So you can either kind of go one by one down the list, or maybe we can assign one committee member for each partnership to ask the questions.
Yeah, I don't think it matters, but we should sort of figure that out so we're not we can be most efficient during the limited time we have. And then my other question, again, I'm new to the board as well, and so I still get a little unsure about the sort of different roles between the ex officio members representing federal agencies who are sort of non-voting in this polling that you mentioned. Is that something that non-voting board members participate in, or how does that work?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Non-voting members can participate, because this is really a recommendation
Gotcha.
that the committee is putting forward, not a final vote.
Thanks for that clarification.
Okay, and Barbara, see your hand up.
Yep, I was gonna move inside because it's starting to rain, but I think I can sorry, do this. Okay. So you said that the applicants, well, my first question is, we are going to interview all 11 applicants, is that correct? Okay. And knowing that they've had these questions ahead of time, their questions may be answered in their opening statement, correct?
They could weave some of those responses into their opening statements. Yeah.
I mean, I would hope they would, but because they're great questions. I really appreciate all the thoughtfulness that went into those questions. And then I have not perused the email from Eric Williams. Are those questions embedded into the email we got with the applications?
The questions themselves are in the evaluation.
Okay, thank you.
Page. Yeah.
And then I was trying to quickly add up the ask of all the high negatives, and I didn't get all the numbers written down. Do you know, just ballpark, what the figure is for combined all the high negatives ratings?
Oh gosh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so was your graph? Do we have that that one slide with
yeah,
all the
let me see if I can pull it back up
on
here.
Barbara, just some quick math. It looks like the total of all the high minuses for biennium 1, which is what we're talking about in the current spending, or current spending plan, is about $20 million.
Okay.
And the spending plan line item right now is 10 million.
Excellent. Thank you. That was going to be my next question. So thank you. And I think I'm thinking that might be all I have right now. Thank you.
Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks for the great presentation. I know it's a lot of information to synthesize into 2 slides. So thanks for the suggested questions too. I think that really helps us as reviewers and recommenders to kind of take what the other 2 expert review teams and OWEB staff have looked at and kind of help derive the conversation. So that's helpful. But kind of what Barbara was mentioning is it'd be great if we could get just that last slide where it sort of is a summary of what the ranking is, what the ask is. It'd be helpful, I think, before we went into the in next week or 2 weeks to have that. And then I just have a couple comments. One, on July 15th, I can be there from 8:30 to 9:30, but I do have to step out for a prior commitment. And then just a reminder for the grants committee, I was on the ecological FIP review team. So just wanted to circle back on that.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. And so you did you mean the summary sheet that's up there? Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, not the summary sheet, but just the end sheet that has everything in the table. Who applied for what biennium, what the ranking was.
Okay. Yeah. So that will be in your materials.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Don't see any other questions, so thank you. And we look forward to the interviews and committee discussions here in a couple of weeks.
All right. And I neglected to mention at the top that we had no request for public comment for this meeting today. So nothing to tackle for agenda item 4. So that wraps our business for the day. And if you do have questions that you think of after the meeting, please do feel free to contact any of us to talk through your questions before we head to the interview meeting on the 14th and 15th.
And I just want to say thank you to the grants committee. This is a big chunk of work. And there are some pretty neat projects, you know, with a lot of potential out there. So good luck with the work and have great interviews and learn lots about them as we have to think about priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks for all your efforts.
All right, everybody. Thank you. See you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.